Garbage collectors scream when they discover what was making noise inside this bag. Casper had seen a brand new 6-person tent thrown away, and he was able to put that to good use. He also encountered a box filled with kittens, and he had taken them to the local animal shelter. It wasn't the best job, but it was definitely an interesting one. That day started like any other. Casper picked up his work route when he came in to report for duty. He and his crew headed out the door, and their shift turned out to be a boring one. To kill the time, the crew decided to play a game to make the day a little more interesting. The game was simple. Everyone in the crew would toss garbage bags inside the truck, but each person would try to do this further and further away from the truck. The person who did the least distance would have to buy everyone a beer after their shift. The heat and stench of the garbage were frustrating, and the game seemed to be a good idea to ease the growing tension. You may say that this game was to boost the morale of the team, but for Casper it was just another way for the crew to single him out. Casper found himself rolling his eyes at the situation. You see, he was the newest member of the crew. He just moved into the city a few months ago, and when he applied for the job, he was assigned to a crew that had been working together for a long time. When it was time for the game, Casper and his crew had taken their spots, ready to aim at the truck. They would toss the trash bags in the air one after the other. Every man yelled and cheered as their bags landed in the truck. Soon it was Casper's turn to take his shot. Casper knew he needed to put in some effort in order not to come last. He picked a distance that he believed would be doable. He bent his knees, gripped the head of the garbage bag tightly, then swung the bag into the air, praying he would make the shot. Everyone watched the trash bag sail into the air. It went higher than the other bags that were thrown before it. For a moment there, it looked like Casper was going to make it, but he overshot, and the trash bag landed only a few feet from the truck. Casper felt disappointed as the rest of the crew cheered and jeered at him for losing once more. As they returned to work, Casper walked up to the trash bag that missed the truck. That was when he heard a strange noise coming from the bag. It was faint and barely audible sound. He couldn't hear it well because his crewmates were noisy. He asked them to quiet down. Casper focused on finding the source of the noise. It did seem to come from the bag that he tossed earlier. Casper tried to tug at the knot of the trash bag, but it was too tight. He considered ripping the bag open, but then he might make a mess all over the road, and their shift was almost over. Casper's crewmates were all exhausted and ready to cash in on their victory beers. One of them was feeling impatient and grabbed the trash bag from Casper's hand and tossed it into the truck. Casper didn't hear the strange noise again, so he just let it be. His crewmates had no intention to solve the mystery with him, and he was also feeling tired. Casper couldn't stop thinking about the strange noise. What if it was made by something alive? Once they arrived at the disposal plant, Casper watched hesitantly as the garbage from the truck was about to be hauled into the disposal belt. Technically, he was done for the day, and he and his crew were good to go. But Casper suddenly had a feeling that something was wrong. Casper couldn't bear to leave without checking. He had to make sure there was nothing alive in the trash bag. He handed his crewmates money to cover the round of beers he owed them from losing the game. He told them he'd catch up for drinks after he checked the bag. His co-workers shook their heads at him disapprovingly, but took the cash and headed out. Casper went back inside and saw that the trash from the truck was already unloaded onto the conveyor belt. Casper assessed each bag. After a few minutes, he noticed an odd-shaped bag coming his way. Could it be the bag that he picked up earlier? As the bag came closer, Casper felt more certain that this was the bag. He could see where he'd tried to open it earlier. Casper grabbed the bag off the ramp and brought it to the sorting area. Casper couldn't wait to open the bag. He wanted answers. Casper pulled out his pocket knife and cut a small hole in the bag. He turned the bag on its side and watched the contents spill out. Casper put gloves on his hands and started to go through the contents looking for whatever it was that made the strange noise. Casper mentally prepared himself to see anything. He knows that raccoons, foxes, and stray cats can get themselves stuck inside garbage bags. But to his surprise, there was no animal. Instead, he found a little electronic recorder, one that looks like a cassette tape. Casper turned the volume up and wondered if he'd hear the strange noise that he had heard earlier. The tape had recorded somebody speaking. Even with the volume up, Casper couldn't make anything out of it. It sounds as if it was a person whispering. Casper held the recorder up to his ear. It was a voice of a scared woman, and when he heard what she said, he felt a chill run through his body. The voice said, "Please, I need help. Come to 52 Wellington Street. I don't have much time. Please rescue me." Casper was stunned. Was this message real? But what could he do? He didn't have that much information to take serious action about it. But what if the woman was really in trouble? Casper didn't know what to do. Casper decided to call the police just in case a woman was out there really in trouble. The police were a bit skeptical at first. Eventually, the dispatcher agreed to send a squad car to the address under the condition that Casper meets them there. When he arrived at the address, there was already a police squad car near the house. Cops were waiting for him. Casper gave them the recorder and explained how he had it. He realized that there was only one cop around. He had expected more. The officer explained that it was common to only send 1 or 2 officers out on a call that wasn't an emergency. It could easily be a prank, and they didn't want to waste police time and resources. The two of them walked toward the house, since he parked the squad car a few houses away. The cop explained to Casper that things can easily get out of hand if the police show up at the front door out of the blue. It was best if Casper would confront them first and show the recorder as evidence. The cop hung back, hidden behind bushes. The officer told him not to worry. The cop would be nearby and would jump into action if Casper was in trouble. Casper rang the doorbell. There was some shuffling behind the door, and a muffled voice through the door asked what he wanted. Casper held up the recorder. He said he found it with a message that mentions this address. The door then swung open too quickly, and Casper wasn't ready for it. It was a man that opened the door, and there was a knife in his hand. The man had a wild look in his eyes and swung at Casper. Fortunately, Casper jumped back and yelled out of shock. The cop immediately jumped out of the bush with his gun drawn. Soon, 2 more squad cars arrived. They were suddenly surrounded by cops. 2 of them transported the man to the car. The others went into the house. Casper stayed outside, watching a monitor showing body camera footage of the lead officer. The cops went through the entire house but didn't find anyone. There was only one place left to search: the basement. They found 3 different locks on the door, and the padlocks on them were shiny and new. It was clear that something sketchy was happening. Once inside, the cops found a woman tied up on a chair. She was crying, shaking, and it was clear that she was exhausted. When the police asked her what happened, Casper was stunned to hear her story. The man who attacked Casper was the woman's husband. He'd always been abusive, but he had snapped recently and locked her in the basement for hours each day. The woman got so scared that for the first time in their marriage, she started to plan an escape. A few days earlier, her husband locked her up in the basement that he didn't tie her up. She searched through the room for something that could help her out, and she found the old voice recorder. She recorded the message that Casper heard. She had to whisper so that her husband wouldn't hear her. She put the recorder in the trash bag and turned it on with the volume very low. Fortunately, her husband was drunk and didn't notice when he took out the trash. A few days passed and no help came, so she thought her plan didn't work. She started to lose hope, and earlier that day, she tried to escape through the basement window. Unfortunately, her husband caught her, and this was when he tied her up to a chair. At that point, she was sure she wouldn't make it out. She was very thankful that Casper found the recording and convinced the cops to check it out. She couldn't stop thanking him. Casper saved her life. The man's now in jail, awaiting trial for several charges that include abduction and grievous bodily harm. He'll be behind bars for a very long time, and his wife will be able to get a divorce. The government has provided her services to help nurse back her mental and physical health. The local news picked up the story, and Casper was claimed to be a hero for literally going to the trash to recover the recorder. Casper became well known around the city. His employer gifted him paid leave for several weeks as a reward and to help him recover from everything.